I've joined the Rawvolution at Naturaw because I know that not all raw food is created equal. I'm passionate about feeding dogs as nature intended. After all, you are what you eat, and so is your dog. At Naturaw, there are no compromises, no confusion, just real raw food made with integrity and a conscience, offering 100% transparency, supporting British farmers, and only using the highest welfare assured ingredients is so important. They're a certified B Corp and reduce their carbon footprint by utilizing solar power and planting trees. They only use completely plastic-free packaging that's home compostable. Prudence and Mr. Binks are simply loving their nutrient-dense and balanced recipes. So try Naturaw today. Just go to naturaw.co.uk and grab 20% off your first purchase with my code AnnaWebb20. Join the Rawvolution and feed exceptional raw food. Hello, I'm Anna Webb, and welcome to this episode of A Dog's Life. I'm overjoyed that we're talking to the amazing Dr. Judy Morgan from across the pond, and this episode is powered by Antonol. Dr. Judy Morgan, how excited am I that you're on A Dog's Life? Welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Now, Judy, I mean, the list of your accolades in terms of awards is too long, really, to mention all of them. But just briefly to say that recently you were voted Holistic Veterinarian of the Decade, Empowered Woman of the Year, Pet Age Woman of Influence, which I love that particularly. But those are just some of the amazing accolades that you hold to your name. And your own podcast, Naturally Happy Pets, which I love, is fabulous because it's designed to really help pet parents advocate for a happier, healthier life for their pets.
Absolutely. Absolutely. At Naturally Healthy Pets, our goal is to educate and empower pet parents so that they can really take control of the health of their pets and ask good questions and have just a lot of education behind them when they are, in the veterinary office so that they can make good decisions.
That's right, because it can be quite, intimidating going to the vets.
Yes.
I find anyway. Well, I find anyway, but that's because I do believe, because of my study, and when they ask that question, what does your dog eat? And I just wait for it, really. The same thing happens every single time. So I'm quite used to it because this has been going on for, 23 years. So, but yeah, it's a shame that hasn't shifted a bit. I don't know what it's like across the pond, Judy. I can only speak for what it's like, mainly in London, England.
It's bad. So interestingly, I do not have a license to practice in the state that I currently live in. I did not get a license when I sold my practices and moved on purpose because I did not want to go back to working 7 days a week, which is kind of a joke, but I didn't want to be back in practice anymore because I want to focus on reaching a wider, really worldwide audience and empowering pet parents everywhere. But it's really interesting now because I'm on the other side of the table. When my pets need something that I can't deal with at home, if they need a surgery, if they need a dental cleaning, if they need lab work sent out, I have to go in and stand on the other side of the table from what I'm used to and have conversations. Now, luckily, I have found a traditional veterinarian who is very open to my raw feeding, to my home prepared meals, to my very, very limited vaccination schedule for my pets. And she hasn't given me a hard time at all. And sometimes that's the best that we can hope for. There are not enough holistic veterinarians. And so, one of the things that I try to help people do is be able to go in and have that conversation with that traditional veterinarian without getting into arguments, but get your point across and get them to understand that you are going to do things a little bit differently from the normal traditional client who is going to follow everything that the white lab coat tells them to do. And so it can be very difficult to navigate that space. And I totally get it. One time, one of my dogs needed to go in for a specialty surgery and he had to spend the night. So my husband dropped the dog off and brought a bag of food for the dog, and the technician kind of was aghast and got this look on their face and said, oh, is that raw food? And my husband said, well, yes, we're raw feeders. Well, you would have thought he had just like literally lit a bomb in the waiting room. Everybody that was going to touch the dog had to put on caps and masks and gowns and booties and gloves. The dog had to be kept in an isolation ward. They made my husband take the toxic bomb of a bag of raw food home and said, well, if you bring back something that is cooked, we will feed that to the dog. So he's like, okay, fine. So he went home and got some gently cooked food and brought it back. But the dog was kept in isolation and had to be handled like he was a toxic bomb because he was a raw fed dog. So I get it. I understand that, when people go in and say, I'm a raw feeder, you may get that kind of overblown, crazy reaction. And I've heard that reaction so many times on the traditional side of things from veterinary technicians, from veterinarians, from clients. And it's a shame, really, that attitude is still out there. These are the same people that I'm sure are handling raw meat in their kitchens, unless they're vegans. They're handling raw meat in their kitchens all the time. They clean up from it, and they're not being poisoned by it. So it's pretty overblown.
Yeah, no, that's it. Overblown. I think it's a really good way of putting it. Certainly I just had hoped since 2002 when, I brought my first miniature bull terrier into my life. And, then it was just up to me, to go to the vet and, sort everything out, rather than it being a family dog. And I just thought, the future will get better. But, it hasn't really. But look, we
tiny
move
bit.
Yeah, a tiny bit, maybe. I don't know. Some vets do embrace it. I know one veterinarian that does embrace raw food feeding, but then, we're going to segue to vaccines in a bit. But they also really promote this one practice, flea and tick treatments, and on a monthly basis. And annual boosters, so,
Right.
You think you give with one hand and take away with the other,
Yes.
in some cases. So I love that you love helping pet parents. I think that's the greatest thing in the world to do, because of course the bond that people develop between their dogs and their cats, we mustn't forget cats, of course, is immense. And our pets bring us so much to help us with our mental health and give us our regular exercise and our companionship and all the rest of it. So I just feel, yeah, it's a wonderful thing that you do, Dr. Judy.
Thank you.
Now, with traditional Chinese medicine, it's something that I'm really particularly interested in. When I did my study with the College of Integrative Veterinary Therapies, I was already on the page, having done acupuncture, not given it myself, but I've got a great acupuncture vet, and I've been working with since about 2008, and he comes to your home. So it's absolutely
Nice.
brilliant. So, obviously you don't have to go anywhere, and your dog's in its relaxed environment, which is great. I absolutely love that. But I'm interested to know, how has your background, as a veterinary traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, influenced your nutritional advice and your lifestyle practice advice?
It totally changed it. So the first modality that I learned outside of traditional medicine was chiropractic. And I accidentally fell into the chiropractic. I didn't realize that that was what the course was that I was taking until after I was already there. And I kind of went, I don't even know if I believe in this. But it ended up changing the way that I practice so drastically that I started looking at what else is out there. And so I dabbled in a lot of different things, but then I took my first acupuncture course, and that was so eye-opening. And acupuncture and chiropractic really agree so well. A lot of the hot acupuncture points are the same places that are hot with chiropractic. So you go down the spine and say, "Oh my gosh, there's really something going on right here. There's a really hot area, a really tight area," and it's like, "Oh, yeah, there's the acupuncture point that I was going to need anyway." So it agrees really well. So I studied acupuncture first, and then started dabbling with Chinese herbs, and then got into the Chinese food therapy. And it was life-changing for me. So I've read a lot of books from the human side with a lot of human recipes and how to help ourselves based on our Chinese personality. So there's 5 elements, and every element has its own personality and its own kind of way of being, our own constitution. And so I'm a wood personality, which means I'm your best friend. I'm really easy to get along with until you make me mad. And then, oh boy, there's going to be an explosion. And those explosions often happen between 1 and 3 a.m. That's when I wake up and go, ah, it's just, but it's really interesting because I know how to use food to calm that down, and I know how to support my system uh, based on that personality. So a wood personality is controlled by metal. And I love the anecdotal stories that go along with it. So the metal axe chops down the wood tree. And the metal element is the lungs and large intestine. And what's really interesting is my weakest organ system is my lungs. And that's because my poor metal part of my body has spent the last 65 years trying to chop down that tree that is so aggressive. And being a wood personality is great because it's something that is very entrepreneurial, which is I'm a serial entrepreneur. It fits me well, but it also can get so out of control. And so I've weakened another element by being so strong in this one element. But by using food therapy, I can fix that, and I can restore that metal part. So metal likes white foods. And it's like, okay, well, I need to eat a lot of white foods. I eat mushrooms, and I don't like eating potatoes from the carbohydrate standpoint, but they're actually a white food that's kind of good for me. I love cauliflower. My husband is like, why do we have to eat cauliflower? It's like he doesn't like it. And I'm like, no, I need it to strengthen what I've got going on. So we can use that same thing for our animals. And I would say that in my practice, once I started using food as the foundation for every single case, figuring out the personality of the animal, where the weaknesses are, where the strengths are, where is an element overbearing, like my wood being overbearing. And so wood personalities we see a lot in black and tan working dogs, like Dobermans, Rottweilers, Shepherds, Malinois. Those dogs are so good at being guard dogs and having a job because that's what their constitution wants them to do. But we can also have those dogs really fall apart if they're frustrated. So one of the things for a wood personality is frustration leads to anger. So if we take that working dog and we don't allow them to work, or we're always correcting them, reprimanding them, we leave them tied up on a chain outside with no ability to do their job, those animals become very frustrated, and that leads to aggression. And then that's where we get a lot of these bite incidents and behavior problems. So food can play into everything. It can play into the weaknesses and the strengths, and we can change behavior, we can change medical outcomes. So I always start with food, and I would say probably 3/4 of the time, all I needed to do was get the diet right and maybe throw a few supplements in there, and we could get rid of medications. We could get rid of a lot of the bad behaviors, a lot of the chronic conditions that we were seeing with these animals. So, and this holds for cats, it holds for people, it holds for any animal. We use food therapy even for our farm animals. So it can be pretty powerful.
Yes, no, that I love that. Well, if medicine is your food, Judy, which it obviously is, how have you seen, over the years, nutrition restore health? And conversely, when clients arrive, can you kind of look at the dog or the cat or the horse, and think, yeah, I think I can guess what you've been feeding this animal on.
A lot of times you can tell. And I've been the chief veterinary officer for a senior dog hospice and sanctuary called Monkey's House.
Yes.
For about 15 years. And those dogs are kind of the best living proof that we have of food therapy being so powerful. So every one of those dogs comes from a high kill shelter with a terminal diagnosis. So they're senior dogs that the family has abandoned at the shelter because they've got mammary cancer, heart disease, dental disease, kidney failure, liver failure, whatever. They're animals that have a terminal diagnosis. So the veterinarian at the shelter does their intake exam and they go, this one will be dead in 3 weeks. It's on the kill list. And then Monkey's House swoops in and says, no, you don't have to kill them. We'll take them. We'll fix them. And so they've run the gamut. We had one dog that came in, a pit bull, who was in stage 4 kidney failure. He was really bad off, and they said, he's not going to live more than 2 or 3 days. And that guy had a very high quality of life using food therapy for 9 months. We had another one that came in with 3 different kinds of cancer, heart disease, dental disease, and she, I think, just passed after 7 years.
Oh, wow.
Being at Monkey's House and using, surgery on some of her cancers, using holistic therapies on some of them, and then obviously food as the foundation. So it is really amazing. Almost 200 dogs have gone through Monkey's House. Once they go there, they're there for life. So whether that life is a few weeks to 7 years, they stay there and they're in a home environment. And so it's a great ending for these dogs who, and they're just so sweet and loving. And dogs are such an amazing testament to the power of forgiveness. And they just love the person who saved them no matter what. And it really is amazing how they can be so abused and abandoned by people, and then turn to the person who swoops in and saves them and say, wow, this is the best thing ever. And all I've got is kisses and I'm happy for every single day. We could all take a lesson from them. But food therapy is probably the biggest cornerstone of the Monkey's House program.
That's so interesting, and I guess you transfer that to individual clients, then, you mirror that
Exactly.
protocol, really. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Interestingly, you're talking about, rescuing and so on. So, my stray feral tomcat, who after Gremlin, who was my first cat that I mentioned before we went live, He had terrible misdiagnosis and it was dreadful. He died on a life support machine. Only my cat could do that. Oh no, it's not funny. But anyway, literally 2 weeks later, and this whole thing again of cyclic energy, Judy, which I guess you're into a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And this wretch of a cat landed on my doorstep. He was definitely on the wrong side of the fence, going towards death. Very thin, no coat, bald in places, you name it. I thought he was a kitten at first until I saw his testicles, which were so large because he was so shrunken. He was shrunken. You know that thing when they're shrunken. And then he went down with triaditis, and I'd love to thank you because I'd not experienced triaditis, not personally, but not in a cat either before. And it's quite a tricky condition, isn't it, in
Yeah.
cats
Yeah.
too? It can be fatal. He's still with us about a year later after the big hit of it, which I'm so happy. And your advice is just brilliant because you do have to follow the absolute conventional treatment process, really, steroid, antibiotics, but it's using these things strategically, which
Yeah.
I think is a key aspect to success. Would you agree? Then this strategic, and what does that mean, really?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my head technician, one of her cats developed triaditis, and it was after I had started really getting into the more holistic way of dealing with things. So it was actually a great case study for us. So we did the traditional things. We ended up having to put a feeding tube in the cat because he absolutely would not eat. And we did use medications, but we also added a lot of supplements. And we did not feed the cat with prescription diets, which would be the normal way to go in a traditional practice. We said no, we can design something much more supportive, much better for this cat that we can make in a slurry and get down the feeding tube. So it was a great case study in combining traditional therapies with alternative therapies. And the cat ended up doing really, really well and ended up having another sort of smaller bout a few years later. We didn't have to do a feeding tube or anything. And he pulled through that very, very quickly. And the cat died of old age. So I'm a huge fan of I'm a holistic veterinarian, but I'm really an integrated veterinarian because there are times, for instance, one of my cats right now is on steroids. She's about 16 years old, and she just started acting really, really, really weird. Indoor cat, raw fed, eating the same exact diet that my other 8 cats eat. Um, and doesn't go outside, so no exposure to anything. And she just started acting really weird. And over a period of a few weeks, she got slower and slower and slower till she got to the point where she was actually head pressing face down in her food bowl and pressing her head against the walls and just acting so strange. So I took her and we got some lab work done, and her white blood cell count was sky high, and her allergy cells, the white blood cells, the eosinophils, were very, very high. And I said, okay, this is some sort of a really weird allergic, autoimmune, weird response to Lord knows what. And so we used to have this saying in vet school that nobody dies without the benefit of steroids. And I took one look at this cat and the lab work and said, well, it's an allergic autoimmune reaction to I don't know what, but steroids would be the drug of choice. So we started her on a pretty decent dose of steroids once a day for about 2 weeks. And within a couple of days, this cat popped right back to being normal, walking around the house, normal
Mm.
cat stuff. And so what I did is I left her on that dose for about 2 weeks and then started weaning her pretty quickly. And she's done very well. We're about 5 weeks into this now. And
Gosh.
then I started her on some supplements as well. and she's doing great. She's acting perfectly normal. She's now down to 2 doses of steroids a week, a very low dose, because we're weaning her off, just to make sure that she doesn't have a relapse. So there are times when we do need to go with that traditional medication. And this is one of those. And if I hadn't done that, I probably would have lost this cat. I have no idea what the cause is. I don't really need to know the cause. I just need to know, can I get her through this? And then with the supplements that she's on now to decrease inflammation, I think that will hold once the steroids stop.
Oh, I do hope she makes a full recovery, Judy, because it's only been so how long? Gremlin was 13, so 15 years I've had a cat in my life. So I'm quite new to cats compared to dogs. And but they so capture your hearts. I mean, they're obviously so different from dogs that, no brainer. But my word, they really are special, I think. Would you agree, Judy?
Oh, absolutely. So when we moved from New Jersey to North Carolina, we brought 3 house cats with us.
Yes.
Um, we were only here for about a year, and we have a farm now. So when you have a farm, cats tend to show up. And 2 pregnant mamas showed up at the same time, and they had kittens within about a week of each other. So we went from 3 cats to 13 kind of overnight.
Wow.
So we currently only have 9, which is pretty good. But 7 of them are outdoor cats that patrol the farm and keep the mouse population down. And I have to say, we've done some really interesting studies. We had a microbiome testing company who said, "Oh, this would be a perfect test." I had to collect stool samples on everybody, which for the outside cats was a little tricky because I had to follow them around. But we said, here's 7 or 9 cats who all eat the exact same thing, but 2 of them live 100% in the house and 7 of them live 100% outside. And so the outdoor cats do catch mice and birds and grasshoppers and crickets and do normal outdoor cat stuff. But what was really interesting when we looked at the microbiomes for the cats and looked at the stress response markers in the bowel, the indoor cats came back with less than stellar microbiomes and high stress response in the bowel.
Wow.
Versus the outdoor cats were perfectly fine. Like their microbiomes were beautiful. They had no stress response markers. And this is something that we've been talking about for a while now, that we think that by keeping our cats 100% indoors, we are keeping them safe from traffic and predators and, getting
poisoning,
in trouble.
Yeah,
Right.
getting into
And
trouble.
So we're keeping them from getting into trouble. But studies have shown that over 80% of indoor cats are highly stressed.
Wow.
And so my cats prove that. It's like, okay, here we've got 2 groups of cats, and the ones who are outside doing normal cat things, climbing, running, chasing, pouncing, hunting, very healthy microbiomes. And you should see those cats. They're raw fed. They're all raw fed, but those outdoor cats have these big, beautiful coats and big bushy tails, and they're muscular because they're always on the go. Really different looking from my indoor cats they're older, but they're kind of rough looking and they don't have good muscling. And so I can see the difference just in looking at the cats, but that microbiome test was pretty telling.
That's so interesting. Yes, the microbiome testing that's available now is an eye opener. And I think from a behavior point of view, a lot of animal welfare charities have already kind of postulated that. I mean, my cats are outdoor cats as well. I feel for cats. And, they can come in and out, they have the choice. And I like to try and keep them in at night, although both Gremlin and Baggy, because is of unknown provenance, you know. He's got a broken jaw. He's obviously I think he was hit by a car somewhere. He has the most funny expression, Judy, because he hasn't got a jaw. I
Oh.
don't know when that went. So he's got this really funny expression, and one of his back right leg is slightly bandy. So when he gallops up my garden, I watch him through the window, you know, he's so funny. But his coat now is so thick, you know, he's on raw, he's well, you know, apart from his
Yeah.
phthiritis. But as I say, you know, we're managing it. Yes, it was awful when the vet wanted to put him to sleep. What the vet said, I said, when I went down there, she said, I'm going to put him to sleep. I said, no, you're not. No, hang on a minute. I'm coming straight down there. So I did. And she said, look, I thought we were talking about euthanasia. And I said, no, well, hang on. You were talking about euthanasia. I want to take him home and I want to buy the rest of those antibiotics, please. He'd been in overnight and hadn't done well in a hospital environment, obviously, because he was a feral cat. So I know. And I mean, she said, oh, I do hope you prove me wrong. But in my experience, he is going to die. I thought that's brilliant, you know, as I just checked out for £1,500.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, I know, sorry, bit of a dig there, but that is a true anecdote. And he's still alive, so she was wrong. So
Oh,
there we
yay,
go.
happy ending.
Hey, no, absolutely. I wish you could meet him. You're obviously really a cat person. I love the way you spoke then about cats, but dogs, I know you absolutely love as well. And tell me, you know, because I know you're mad about Cavalier King Charles Spaniels and the toy spaniel, which in England we call the King Charles Spaniel. I'm pretty sure that's the same spaniel, the one with a slightly snubby nose. It's
Right.
a very rare
So,
breed. Yeah.
yeah, right now I have one Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, and then I have two English toy spaniels with the smushy nose and the short tail. And then we have one Cocker Spaniel.
Oh,
So I guess I just like spaniels.
oh yeah, nothing wrong with that. My dog, when I was 16, was a rescue golden cocker actually, and she hated everyone apart from me, and it broke her heart when I went off to get my psychology degree and everything. And yeah, you know, dogs really, you know, they. As my dad always used to say, they do define chapters in our lives. Would you agree on that, Judy?
Absolutely. And I guess I'm a spaniel person because the first family dog, when I was born, we had a dog that was a Cocker Spaniel Irish Setter cross. So
Oh,
he was the bright red of an Irish Setter, a little taller than a Cocker, but much smaller than an Irish Setter. And he was the same thing. He hated everybody except for my mother, my sister, and I. He was definitely a family dog and just didn't really like anybody else. But so I grew up with that spaniel, and then my family went through a period, and I started as an adult with Dobermans. So a big change.
yes.
And I really, really loved my Dobermans. But my last Doberman came from a breeder that bred for size. So he was huge. He was 125 pounds. But he had wobbler syndrome, which is a
Oh,
malformation of the vertebrae in the neck. And he was playing with another big dog one time, and they started to get a little aggressive. And I grabbed him by the collar and pulled back. And when I did that, it shifted his vertebrae and caused paralysis of all four legs. And he's a 125-pound dog. So it's like, okay. And he was still fairly young. He was like 6. And I said, okay, well, I've got to get this dog back up and walking. So we did chiropractic, I did acupuncture, and cold laser, you know, all the different things that in my toolbox. And it took about 5 days, but we got him back up, walking, running, back to his normal self. But that 5 days of having to move around a 125-pound dog was enough for me to say, this is my last big
yeah.
dog, and I'm getting old enough that we're going to small dogs. And my daughter had a Cavalier at the time. She was a teenager and she wanted to adopt a Cavalier, so she did. And so that was the start of the whole Cavalier parade that has gone through our house, which is probably 100 of them now, because we've done a ton of rescue work as well. So at one time we had 13 dogs that were ours that we had adopted. One rescue group would not let me foster anymore because she said, you just keep them all. And I said, well, can you think of a better home? I mean, they have a great home. What's the problem with keeping them all? So anyway.
Oh no, they're lovely. No, it's so funny because my auntie, her sister bred Cavaliers. It was her, I think her affix was Maxwell, if I remember rightly. And every year we'd go to Crufts on the Toy and Utility Day because I was mad about Tibetan Spaniels. So I spent a lot of time with Cavaliers as a child, actually. So yeah, I love them. I mean, I've kind of progressed to not progressed, that's the wrong word, but I'm a bit of a terrier girl now. The terrorists.
I call them terrorists too. My mother had standard schnauzers.
Oh,
And
the German
when my,
Terrier.
and when my parents moved in with us, their standard schnauzer was a very sweet dog, but she had to live with, at that point, we had 10 dogs. So it was a house full of dogs, which was quite interesting for my parents because they were always the, one dog in the family. And I'm like, oh, well, now you got to trip over 10. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, no, fantastic, fantastic. Tell me, when your Doberman had the wobbler syndrome, I mean, I love the fact that you brought him back. I mean, that's the power. I mean, I love the cold laser as well. I work with a brand actually called Fotizo Vet Care. It's a handheld device which I've been using since about 2014 for all sorts of things. It's like a cure all in this house. It's amazing, actually. Obviously, it's very different from the laser, which is completely different. I love all of that.
Hey, Anna.
Hey, Mike.
So we've just finished Billy's first 60 days of Antinol, and wow, what a difference.
Really? Oh my gosh, what have you noticed?
Well, he's shiner. He's much more energetic. Not that he wasn't beforehand, but you can see the difference. But remember, I told you he used to have that little limp in his back left paw that he'd hurt himself as a pup. He
Yes,
doesn't seem
yes.
to do that much anymore.
What, the hop, skip, and the jump?
Yeah, yeah. So it's like his joints are a bit better. And we actually had friends around this weekend who'd noticed that there was something good about Billy. And I was telling them about Antinol, and they said, "Oh, what's in it?" I said, "Well, green lip muscle." And they said, "What's that?" And I go, "Oh, well, I don't know. I'll have to ask Anna," as I always do. So
Well,
for next time, what should I say? What's so great
what,
about green lip muscle?
well, green lip mussel, it comes from New Zealand. It's the only place that green lip mussels live. And what's great about the green lip mussel is that it is what's known as a broad spectrum source of omega-3. And the reason dogs need to take omega-3 is that their bodies don't make it themselves. So unless they're getting it through, their diet, which can be omega-6 heavy. And it's very important to have a balance between omega-6 and omega-3. So it's normally through supplements that omega-3 is given. And green lip mussel is unique in its having everything from EPA, DHA, and ETA. So all the main omega-3s.
And how about Binks and Prudence? They must be much better as well.
Yeah, well, they've been on it for over a year, and they've been on green lip mussel forever since I've had them. So Prue's 10 now. So she's had green lip mussel since the first day I brought her home, to be honest, but not Antinol. And I only wish I'd discovered Antinol earlier. I really honestly mean that, because it's an oil rather than a powder. So its bioavailability, that means, its effectivity to get absorbed quickly and efficiently by the body is greater.
So people listening now and they want to discover Antinol for themselves, where do they go?
Well, all you have to do is go to Antinol, ANTINOL.co.uk, and then type in Anna Webb and get your special discount. But just touching quickly on supplements, Judy, because it's a market now that's worth something really ridiculous, like multi-trillion billion dollars or something, But, not all supplements are at all created equal, right?
No, absolutely not. And that's part of how my company, Naturally Healthy Pets, has evolved. When I was still in practice, we started our website to enable my clients were driving anywhere up to 7 hours each way to bring their pets to the clinic. And so when they needed refills on things, it was like, well, we're going to have to ship that. I'm not going to make you drive 7 hours each way to come pick up your things for the dog. So we started the website, and it started to grow as our name grew. And so we said, okay, well, let's see what else is out there on the market. So we went to one of the biggest pet industry shows here in this country, which is Global Pet down in Florida. It's held each spring. And so there will be like 1,000 different vendors there with different products for fish, birds, dogs, cats. And so the first few years that we went, we always kind of hung in the natural pet aisle. And it was pretty eye-opening because I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I was looking for anything that I thought would be beneficial for my clients to use for their pets. And so my husband and I went and we just started walking down the natural pet aisle, and there's a booth every 10 feet and they would have their products sitting out front. And so I would walk by, I'd pick up a bottle, I'd read the ingredients and either go, huh, that looks pretty good, or, oh my gosh, and, put it back down. And so we ended up, over the course of 3 days, we ended up connecting with 10 companies out of the thousands that were there. We connected with 10 companies that I felt had products with ingredients that were high enough quality without any kind of preservatives or fillers or dyes or sugars, anything that would be harmful. And so we placed those orders and our website grew. And so we go to that show every single year, and we are always looking for companies that are doing things the right way, that have ingredients that we're incredibly picky about the ingredients, but then we're also very picky about the company itself. So I want to meet the owners of the company. I want to sit down and have a conversation with them. I want to talk to other people who have worked with the companies. There are some companies out there that make decent products, but their integrity or ethics in how they deal with other people are less than stellar. And so they get taken off the list. And it's been really interesting because the first time somebody said to me that I was an influencer, I looked at them and said, what are you even talking about? I didn't even know what that is. And I've come to realize that, yes, I am now an influencer.
You definitely are, Dr. Judy. I think,
but it wasn't by design. It was just using my knowledge in the space, just really looking at things from the point of, would I be willing to use this on my own personal animals? And would I be willing to use this on myself? So all of the shampoos and soaps that we have on our website, I have used personally on my own hair. Most of our supplements I have tried, and pretty much everything that we have, my dogs and cats have taken or eaten. So we're always looking for human grade. And I say that if the world suddenly implodes and the grocery stores all shut down, I don't have to worry about food because I have a warehouse full of human grade food that's labeled for pets. But if I needed to, I would have no problem eating it because it's all human grade.
That's so interesting. I agree with you on that. I mean, finding actually a good food supplier, it's pretty hard at the moment in the UK because the raw food sector has taken a big jump of growth. But a lot of the brands are, what we call here white labeled. So they're not made, the people that are selling them with their branding on haven't actually sourced the ingredients.
Right.
Is the meat from Britain or has it been imported? For example, I mean, my cat, Baggy, who you know well now from this podcast, he likes to eat a brand that has a lot of rabbit in it, and he does like his rabbit, but rabbit isn't from the UK. I mean, it's a very good brand I feed him on. It's very expensive. And that's great. So I hope that the rabbit is farmed ethically because I know it isn't from the UK, for example. However, it's a risk to benefit. I like to keep him eating because of the triaditis. He also likes chicken and he likes a bit of beef, and we mix it up. And I'm with a great raw food brand actually called Natu Raw that I think you would love. Do you know what they do to offset their footprint, Judy? The whole of their actual manufacturing plant is solar powered, and
nice.
Yeah, I know. And everything's plastic free, but they also plant trees.
Nice.
Yeah, which I think they planted over 30,000 trees, so a lot, which is good because we have to bear in mind all of this. I think air miles and again the quality of the meat, because that's the main ingredient, isn't it, for dogs and cats? Actually, well, mainly
Right.
yeah, it's meat. So how do people do that? How do people get the quality?
You've got to ask a lot of questions. So over here in this country, like on my website, I put out a list of what I feed my own animals. So it's a short list. There's like 10 brands that are on the list. Susan Thixton at Truth About Pet Food puts out the list. It's called The List once a year. And in order for companies to get on her list, they have to submit their bills of lading for every single ingredient that is in their food, and whether it's human grade, how the meat is raised, is it humanely raised, is it humanely sourced, are the vegetables organic, and nobody can buy their way onto that list. So Susan's list is, you pay a few bucks to get it, but is totally worth it. I think it had 40 different brands on it this year. But consumers need to ask questions, because we have the same thing over here. Raw feeding is growing very rapidly, and raw and gently cooked. And I'm thrilled with that. So we call it, fresh feeding. And I'm thrilled to see that growth. But with that said, there are a lot of companies that do shady things and have very poor sourcing. They're not complete diets. A lot of things that are not done well. And we also have the same thing where a lot of celebrities will put their name on something, but it's basically a white label. It's being made somewhere else. They have no idea. They've never seen the ingredients going in. And so, I would say people need to do their research to ask good questions. Where are you sourcing from? Like we have some companies where they will list the farms where their meat comes from, and then you can look up the farm and see how the animals are raised. And let me tell you, if they're putting the farms on there where the meat is coming from, believe me, it's going to be well sourced, because you wouldn't want to put the name out. Like you wouldn't want to say, "Oh, we're buying it from the renderer around the corner. We're buying it from the dead meat guy who picks up the dead deer on the side of the road."
Roadkill. Oh,
but there are companies that use roadkill. There are companies that have been caught using meat that has animals that have been euthanized. And we had one where euthanasia solution in the food killed a dog and made the other 4 dogs in the family sick. And on their website, they proudly proclaimed, "Oh, this is all human grade, USDA inspected." They left out the condemned part. Yes, it was USDA inspected and condemned, and by the way, had euthanasia solution in it. So you can't always believe the website.
No, that's true. Yes. I mean, we're living in such a world where, in a way, reality is masked by everything,
Yeah.
social media and flashy advertising and so on.
And now we have AI to contend with, which just is making it worse.
Oh,
Much worse.
I don't. I feel I'm too old for all this, actually, to be
Me
honest.
too. Me too.
I mean, it's like life's complicated enough. Do we really need this? But it's so interesting. Well, in a way, it's heartwarming to hear that it's going on across the pond as well. And I think, it's good.
I think it's in every
advice.
country. I think it's in every country, really. I think it's a problem worldwide.
Yes. What do you think about omega-3? I'm very nervous about fish, actually, which is a shame to be, but it's just because, the sea and water. I mean, our British rivers have been contaminated recently by, well, you would have heard of this study, by fipronil,
I've read that study.
Yeah,
I've talked about that study.
It's great. Dr. Andrew Prentice was behind it at Imperial College London. Yeah. I mean, Andrew used to be my vet, actually, before he retired. Yeah, terrible. So I mean, don't eat fish from a British river.
No. No, we
Yes. Well,
usually look to fish oils coming from Scandinavian waters. So Norway, Sweden, uh, that those waters tend to be much cleaner, colder, cleaner. But we can also can do things like calamari oil, um, Greenland mussel oil. From New Zealand's got clean waters. Uh, so I'm a huge fan of omega 3s, adding omegas. We don't, they're not quite as critical when we're feeding a well sourced diet.
mm,
So meats that are coming from animals that are humanely raised, grass fed, the omega 3 content is going to be much higher than, for instance, in kibble or food that's been cooked to death or confinement raised animals. The omega 3 levels are going to be way low. I do supplement omega 3s for my dogs, even though they are on incredibly well-sourced diets. And so probably the omega 6 to 3 ratio of the foods that I'm feeding are 2 to 1, maybe 3 to 1. And
yes.
that's great if we can get them down to that level. When we're looking at things like kibble, it's 30 to 1, which is really bad. So you're definitely going to need to be supplementing. But the reason I supplement my dogs in addition to being on that really high quality diet is because I have a breed that really likes to have heart disease.
Yes.
And
Yes. Oh,
they also have a lot of neurologic problems. And I know that the heart and the brain and the joints really, really love high omega 3 levels. So I do supplement mine, even though they're on a good diet.
yeah. No, that's interesting to know. No, ditto, ditto. I've always been a fan, actually, of green-lit mussel. I think it's a broad spectrum. Again, it's all down on. I'm lucky, actually. I do feed green-lit mussel oil, which in fact, actually, our podcast sponsor. I kept banging on their door, Judy. I was like, I would love you to sponsor my podcast because I love green-lit mussel and I love the fact it's an oil and not a powder.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so that's good. Hey, it's good to, that's the thing. You've got to have the right brand associations. I mean, loads of people, there's no way I could have had a kibble sponsor. Can you imagine? And then the podcast wouldn't have had any value. Ooh, oh dear.
Exactly.
Mike,
Yeah,
you might have to edit that. No, I'm
we're
joking.
very, very picky about sponsors, advertisers, and we had our big Naturally Healthy Pets experience in Orlando this past year, and our next one will be in Dallas, Texas, in April of 27. So we have international speakers from around the world and 500 attendees. So it's a great time for to come together with like-minded people, and people don't look at you cross-eyed when you say I feed raw. But last time, I think we had 54 vendors in our Naturally Healthy Pets market. This time we'll have close to 100. And in order to get in our market space, you have to be approved. And so there were a lot of companies that wanted to be vendors at our last event that we said, nope, this does not live up to our standards that we apply. And it's really interesting. Companies sometimes will reach out to us and say, what do you think about this supplement, this ingredient deck? And we'll look at it and go, well, don't like this, don't like this, don't like this. And they'll change it. And then they'll come back to us and say, well, does this meet your approval? And so that goes back to I didn't think I was an influencer, but when I have companies who are coming to me and saying, if I change this, will you like it? It's like, well, I don't know. Let me see it after you change it. But it's interesting. And one of the pet food companies that I work with all provide, before I had even met them in person, a friend had sent me their ingredient list and said, what do you think about this food? And so we were emailing back and forth, and the company got involved in the email exchange. And I said, well, if it were me, I would change this to be this, and I would, not do this. And over the course of about 6 months, unbeknownst to me, they were taking everything that I said and changing their recipes and formulation to match what I was saying I would do if it was me. I had no idea. I finally met them in person like a year later, and they're like, "Okay, we did everything you said." I said, "What do you mean you did everything I said?"
Well, I hope they paid you for that advice, Judy.
We have a partnership now in that I have designed a line called Constitutions, which is based on the Chinese element personalities. Yes. And so I came up with the recipes and I said, boy, I'd love it if somebody would make this. I don't want to own a pet food company. And they said, well, we could do that. And so they also make my pup loaf and cat loaf, which those recipes have been around for, especially the pup loaf has been around for a long time. I have people from all over the world send me pictures of their homemade pup loaf. But there are some people that don't want to cook, don't know how to cook, don't even know how to turn on their oven. Like I had an office
like
manager.
Me. No, I'm joking.
My office manager stored purses and shoes in her oven. And I said, why would you do that? And she said, I don't cook and my apartment's really small. So that is a great storage space.
Well, I could tell you another, well, it is. And I'll tell you another anecdote to that. So I do a radio show with this brilliant broadcaster called Joe Good. And we're great friends as well. I've been doing this dog slot on the BBC. Would love it if you'd come on one time, actually. Guess what she does with her oven? Joe keeps all of her mohair and wool in special bags in her oven because she never turns the oven on, obviously.
There you go.
Thank goodness. And it keeps it's sealed so the moths can't get in there. So it's a moth antidote. Top tip for everyone. So keep your sweaters in the oven. Just don't turn the oven on.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? Goodness.
I think my husband would have my head. So he does all the cooking.
I know. Oh gosh. But there you go, because I mean moths, they're devils, I mean, but we digress. Very briefly, Judy, why do you think that many vets nowadays are unable to do a titer test?
That was a very good question. I just did a reel on this the other day because there's a recall from Boehringer Ingelheim, BI. Some of their rabies vaccine vials had sterile saline in them instead of rabies vaccine. So I think there were 30,000 doses in the batch and, a handful of them had sterile saline, which any good veterinarian or technician would have looked at the vial and said, oh, this is clear. It's not pink like a rabies vaccine. I think I won't use this one. But they went out and then when they discovered the problem, they said, okay, well, now every single animal that was vaccinated with that particular serial number lot of rabies vaccine should be revaccinated to make sure that they actually get the real vaccine, just in case. So we're going to revaccinate 30,000 animals because, a dozen might not have gotten the actual rabies vaccine.
Oh my, but then others might become too over-vaccinated, right?
Yeah, you think? So this client was on the social media page and she said, well, I said I didn't want to revaccinate my dog because my last dog died from immune-mediated hemolytic anemia after vaccines. And so just the fact that I even got my dog vaccinated makes me nervous. And now they want me to give another one 2 weeks later. So she said, I asked them if we could do a titer instead. And the pharmaceutical company said, no, we will give you a free vaccine, but we will not pay for a titer. So she said, okay, I asked my veterinarian if the vet could just do the titer and I'll pay for it because the company won't. And the vet quoted her $900.
What?
God. Yeah. I mean, and what that basically says is we don't want to do the titer. So we're going to give you an exorbitant fee so that you'll go away and you'll just do the vaccine and stand down. And I see this all the time there are some veterinary social media pages where it's veterinarians only. They spend a lot of time in there complaining about clients. And one of their biggest complaints is that people want titers. And so a lot of them will say, oh, I just tell them it's $600 and that shuts them up. And then they just get the vaccine. That is a terrible attitude to have. And, if you're wondering why people have mistrust around the veterinary industry right now, and they don't just want to, bow down and accept everything that they're told and pay the bills without complaint. First of all, that is just horrendously greedy pricing, because the rabies titers are under $100 at the lab. So even if we double it, fine, charge $200. But charging $600, $900, that is just, it's greed, and it's basically saying to your clients, no, I don't want to do that.
But it's also a worry. I know, but Judy, sorry to cut in, but it's also a worry, because it seems to me that I just don't over vaccinate. I mean,
right.
Prudence, my miniature bull terrier, she had her puppy shots, and that's fine. She's 10.5, and she's not had any of the diseases, and she's still alive. And so similarly, my little toy terrier, who's a rehome, he'd had every single vaccine. Yeah. For a 2-year-old dog. I mean, everything. It was awful. And he hasn't had anything since. And he's 14 in 11 days' time, Judy. He's got leg calspers. He's that one. But I love him to pieces. The English toy terrier. You call them the toy Manchester. I love all these across the pond. Yeah, and they featured actually on Westminster. I saw them, they were like, and there goes the toy Manchester. I'm going, go Binks. It's your relative, because they're such a rare breed, But we digress. But yeah, I mean, it's just this thing. Can they actually read titers, as well?
Well, and that is part of it. We all took immunology in vet school, so we know how this works. But even though we have that knowledge behind us, you get veterinarians who say titers are meaningless, that they don't tell you anything. I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't tell you anything? It tells you there's antibodies present, and you can get a level. I mean, some labs just tell you, yes, it's positive, or no, it's negative. But you can also get a level. I mean, if it's 1 to 4, 1 to 16, 1 to 80, whatever it is. What do you mean it doesn't tell you anything? If you've got a positive titer, it tells you there's antibodies floating around in the bloodstream that recognize that disease. Done. We don't need to give another vaccine, because their body recognizes that. Where we get into more trouble is, let's say we get a negative titer, and the only thing we can measure is circulating antibodies. What we can't measure is the cellular response, the cellular immunity. There's no way to measure that. So let's say your dog had a parvo vaccine as a puppy, and the dog's now 10. You do a titer, and it comes up negative for parvo. Okay, well, he doesn't have circulating antibodies right now. But that also tells you, well, he hasn't been exposed to parvo anytime recently. Otherwise, the antibodies would have woken up and said, hey, we got to do something. But we still have that cellular immunity that's floating around inside the cells that we can't measure. So what happens if your dog goes to the park, and there was just recently a dog there who had parvovirus and shed it in the park, and your dog, stomps through that, sniffs that, licks that area, whatever. And now there are viral particles that get into your dog's body, and the bloodstream goes by that and says, holy cow, I remember that from 10 years ago. I'm going to wake up and do something about it. And then they make antibodies. We can't measure that part. So we just don't know. But this is where no-sodes come in. No-sodes can be incredibly powerful. We've had some people who have done 0 vaccines, but have done no-sodes. And those animals come up with titers much higher than animals who were vaccinated 4 times. So, some things we can measure and some things we can't. But to the veterinarian who says titers mean nothing, if you've got a positive titer, that absolutely means something. If you have a negative titer, then it's still a question mark. But if you've got a positive titer, you've got a protected animal. So, I don't understand the argument.
It's interesting, isn't it? You think there's something a bit bigger going on there, shall we say?
Brainwashed by vaccine companies much?
I don't think they'll be sponsoring my podcast.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't want that either.
Oh, Judy, this is so brilliant. I've so enjoyed this conversation. And I do hope you'd think about coming back on, because there's so much more we could talk about. So you've left us all with a lot of great food for thought, and I just urge everyone to check out your hub. So just remind us all your hub, where everything is. drjudymorgan.com or naturallyhealthypets.com. Both go to the same place.
And then when you go there, we also have a tab for Dr. Judy U, where we have courses, and some of those courses are taught by me. Some of them are taught by other brilliant veterinarians and people in the pet space, like Dr. Connor Brady, Dr. Nick Thompson, Dr. Steve Marsden. So we have a lot of courses on there for people who want to dive a little bit deeper or have a specific problem. And we actually have a certification course for hospice and palliative care for anybody who is looking to help with hospice and palliative care. We have some people who take it just because they want to know what to do with their own senior pets. And for your listeners, we do have an offer for 50% off all of my books. I have 9 books on our website, and that's Dog's Life 50. That will get you 50% off of any of my books.
Oh, wow. Gosh, a Dog's Life 50. I love that. By the way, at your first conference, the Natural Expo this year, my tutor, who I must get on the podcast, Barbara Fougere, was one of your speakers.
She's great.
Yeah, honestly, she was so funny with me because I got a bit OCD particularly when we were talking about building biology and learning about all the chemicals in the home. It was quite funny, but yeah, I love Barbara. I've got to get her on my board actually. But listen, so that was a Dog's Life 50 to get 50%
Dog's Life 50.
Yep. Love that, Judy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's our show, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go on, rate and review the show wherever you tune into your podcasts. A huge thanks again to Dr. Judy Morgan for joining us today. And there's a very special offer for all listeners to benefit from 50% of all of Dr. Judy's books simply using the code DOGSLIFE50. And if you're interested in finding out a bit more about Antinol, go to their website, and at checkout, you can just use my code and benefit from my discount. My code is Webb. And for Naturaw, you can grab 20% off your initial purchase simply by using Webb20. Thanks, of course, to Mike, my producer, for all the music and production as ever. And if you haven't already, go on, subscribe, because it's free. And that way, you'll never miss another show. Bye for now.